morning, everyone. Welcome to the Get Licensed to Build workshop. This is a free online workshop for those who want to get their California contractor's license. Our goal this morning is to go through all the parts of our license application and give you practical tips to help you complete it correctly. To give you every opportunity to demonstrate your experience and qualifications to get your California contractor's license. We will also help get you ready for your licensing exams and give you a link to a video that shows you exactly what to expect on your test date. Today's webcast is presented by the Contractors State License Board, the government agency responsible for regulating the California's construction industry. My name is Anna Rodriguez. I'm an enforcement supervisor, and we're joined today by Fode from our CSLB licensing department. Good morning, Fode.
Good morning. CSLB is overseen by a 15-member board that directs administrative policy for our operations. Our board is made up of 10 public members, including 1 labor representative, 1 local building official, and 1 representative of a statewide senior citizen organization, and 5 contractors. Appointments are made by the government and the state legislature.
If you are watching this right now on either YouTube Live or Facebook Live and want to participate, you'll need to join us on WebEx. There's a banner with a link on the top of our homepage, www.cslb.ca.gov. That is also where you can download the presentation to follow along. The presentation file includes clickable bonus links that appear on slides throughout this workshop. We are going to present a lot of information to you, so don't worry if you don't get it all. We will archive this video of the workshop and put it on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch it again. To ask a question, you're going to want to use the Q&A feature on the bottom right of your screen. Make sure to send the questions to all panelists. That way we can all see it. Finally, we tend to get a lot of questions during these workshops on how you document your work experience and what credit you can get for your education or military service. Those questions are fine, but we would ask that you wait to send all of those questions until after you see that part of the workshop. We will go through your questions at the end of our presentation. The presentation takes about 45 minutes, and then after that, we will answer questions.
The information obtained during this webcast is not, nor is intended to be legal advice. While this webcast contains general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of the law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines communicated or discussed during the webcast are for informational purposes only. If you have questions about the application of the law for specific situations, you should contact an attorney who is familiar with California construction law or review the 2020 edition of the CSLB publication called California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You can download it for free on CSLB website or purchase it directly from the publisher LexisNexis. There are links for both at the bottom of the screen.
So here's a list of what we are going to be covering today. We will take you through the process of applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Then, why get a contractor's license? What are the minimum qualifications you'll need to get a license, and what credits you might qualify for? We're going to talk about the types of business entities, the different CSLB license classifications. We will spend a lot of time giving you tips to help fill out your applications, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet minimum qualifications. We're going to talk about fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check, and we will help you get ready for your exam or exams that you'll need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you'll need to have in place before your license is issued, things like a bond and insurance.
Okay. First, today we will take a look at who needs a license. Here in California, a state contractor's license is needed for all construction projects priced at $500 or more. That total includes both labor and materials. The law does not let you break down a project into $499 pieces. It's the entire project. Also, you can charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours for the job totals $500 or more, you need a contractor's license. So what is the definition of a contractor? The definition comes from the state's Business and Professionals Code. In this case, it's sections 7026.1. We have got a link to that code at the top of the page if you download the presentation. I will read the entire code, but pay special attention to the part we underlined. A contractor is any person, consultant to an owner, building, firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, to have the capacity to undertake or submits a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. In other words, you don't have to do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor's license just to advertise that you can do the construction work, or even to give a bid for construction job if the bid totals $500 or more.
So you may be asking yourself why you should get a license. Here are a few good reasons. First, you can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows you've taken the steps to get licensed and you're serious about your career choice. It allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make your community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work that you do. There is a value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you legal options if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed in the first place to do it. Also, you would be able to use the mechanic lien laws. Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with the fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence of up to 6 months in jail and or a $5,000 fine, and potential administrative fines anywhere between $200 to $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license when one is required in the state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using somebody else's license number. Remember, there are no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you do not have to go to the license preparation schools to get a contractor's license.
So what do you need to get your license? First, it is important to understand that CSLB does not license individuals. We license companies or businesses, also called entities. Many entities are one-person operations, but know that every entity, even a one-person operation, must have a qualifier. That's someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. Here is a short list of minimum qualifications you will need. You must be at least 18 years old. You must have either a valid social security number or valid individual taxpayer identification number or ITIN. You can qualify the license in one or two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years experience within the last 10 years as a journey person, foreperson, supervising employee, or contractor in the trade being applied for. Or you can also get a qualifier for the license who has that required experience. We will spend a lot of time talking about how you can demonstrate your experience on your application in a few minutes.
It may be possible for you to substitute your education or your technical training and your apprenticeship training for some of the required experience. We tend to get a lot of questions on this. First, CSLB cannot prejudge your experience. Due to the number of applications we receive and process every month, we don't have the staff time that would be needed to prejudge your experience. We can only review the documents after you apply for your license. Next, to get education credit, the coursework must be directly related to the work that you will be doing as a contractor. Your education cannot be submitted for more than 3 years or 36 months of the required experience, meaning you will need to have at least 1 year of practical experience if you get the full 36 months credit for your education. To apply for education credit, you must provide CSLB written documentation. That means a copy of any apprenticeship completion certificates that you've received, or get the official technical school or college transcripts. You're going to want to get those college transcripts sent to you. Do not open the envelope. You want to leave it sealed and include it with your CSLB application packet. Note that high school courses will not earn you any credit towards your contractor license.
If you are looking to get education credit to meet the 4 years or 48 months of experience, you will need to get your license. This is the most important slide of this entire workshop. This is the kind of credit you can expect to receive for your education. Note that for some areas, we are only giving you averages, or you will see that your credit will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We are not going to be able to give you any more guidance than what you see on this slide. So our best advice is do not rely on the combination of your experience and education credits to barely hit the 4-year experience mark. There is always the real possibility you will not get as much education credit as you were hoping. Let's go through the chart from the most credit you can get to the least. The most education credit you can get is for a Bachelor of Science degree in Construction Management. That degree will get you the full 36 months of credit. Next is a Master's or Bachelor degree in Business or a Law degree. Any of those will get you 24 months of credit. An Associate in Science degree in Construction Management will get you 18 months credit. A bachelor's degree in some other major will get you an average of 18 months credit. An associate degree in a major beside construction management will get you an average of 6 months credit. Credit for individual college classes are given on case-by-case basis, usually with a maximum of 6 months credit. Apprentice completion certificates will get you 24 to 36 months, depending on the classification of the program. For example, a sheet metal worker apprenticeship gets you 24-month credit for the C20 HVAC and C43 sheet metal classifications only. A lineman apprenticeship gets you 36 months in C7 low voltage and C10 electrical classifications only. If you have transcripts for other technical training you have taken, you might be able to get some minimal credit as well. Again, don't use your education credits to try and squeak by the 4-year or 48-month requirement.
If you served in the military, some of that service may count as well. On the bottom of the page, you'll see a bonus link to our CSLB Military Application Assistance Program where you can learn more. The license qualifier also must pass 2 different exams, both taken on a computer at one of our CSLB test centers. One exam is on the California business law. The other is in the specific trade that's going to be covered by your license. We also have limited specialty licenses, which we will discuss later. Those licenses only require the qualifier to take the license business exam. As we mentioned, the qualifier is the one who must take and pass the required exams or qualify for a waiver. We're not going to spend too much time talking about the waiver, only to know that you may be able to request a waiver for taking one or both of your examinations in very specific situations. We recommend that you look at the CSLB website for more information on those specific situations. We have included a bonus link at the bottom of the page here. The qualifier must also undergo the criminal background check. We will go more in depth on that in a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operations. They are also responsible for all workmanship issues. It is also important to note here that if you are trying to get a B general building license and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you are responsible as a project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
The next thing you are going to need to determine before applying for your license is which type of entity your business will be. There are 4 types. First is the sole ownership, where the owner or responsible managing employee may serve as the license qualifier. Just about 2/3 of the contracting businesses in California are sole ownerships. Second, a corporation, where either of the current officers designated as the responsible managing officer or the responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. Just under 1/3 of our licenses are corporations. A distant third is a partnership, where either of the general partners or a responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. That's 2% of our licenses. Finally, a limited liability company or LLC, where a responsible managing member, responsible managing manager, responsible managing officer, or responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. About 1.5% of California construction companies are LLCs.
Now let's talk about license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filling out your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There is a bonus link to our classifications list at the bottom of this screen here. First is our Class A, or general engineering contractors. These are contractors who deal with fixed works that require specialized engineering knowledge and skill. A contractors are the ones that build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are just over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Next is our Class B, or general building contractors. This is the largest class of contractors in California, with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires as part of its construction at least 2 unrelated building trades or crafts. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry, unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limit on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final class is C, or specialty contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires special skill and whose principal contracting business involves the use of specialized building trades or crafts. Examples from this class include the C10 electrical contractors, C20 HVAC contractors, C27, which are the landscaping contractors, C33 plumbing contractors, C39 are roofing contractors, C46 the solar contractors, and then our C53 swimming pool contractors, just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes under our C61 classification. These include the C61/D49 tree services. That's a limited class. More than 209,000 contractors hold a C license in California.
Here are the 2 forms you will need. On the left is the license application. On the right, the certification of work experience. You can get these forms on the CSLB website. That is your bonus link on the left side of the page, so be sure to download this presentation. We will give you a closer look at the different sections of these forms in a little later. Okay. Now, let's break down the steps of application process. First, identify who will be the qualifier for your license. That person will be responsible for exercising direct supervision and control of the company. If you are using an RME or responsible managing employee as your qualifier, determine if he or she can qualify for an exam waiver. Be aware of companies You pay to connect you with the license qualifier. In some cases, these qualifiers are on a different part of the state and cannot exercise the direct supervision needed, or they aren't willing, or maybe even don't understand their role as a qualifier. Next, make sure you complete the correct application. There are two options: application for original contractor license and application for original contractor license examination waiver 7065. We've got links to both at the bottom of the page.
The next step is determining your company name. Take a look at the application for examples. Some things to keep in mind: your name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than what you are getting. For example, if you're going to apply for a C36 plumbing license, you cannot have company name of John Smith Plumbing Construction, Heating and Drywall. Corporate and LLC names must match exactly the name that you've registered with the California Secretary of State, with the SOS office. The name of everyone who appears on the Secretary of State registration must be listed on your CSLB application as well. You can also use what is called a DBA, which stands for Doing Business As. The main thing to remember here with the DBA is that your DBA name cannot be misleading, and you must use that name in all of your advertising and on all of your contracts. Next, you'll want to get together certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Next, be sure to note if you are a military veteran. Some of your military services may be used to meet your 4 years of experience qualification. Also, your application may be expedited through our Military Application Assistance Program. We mentioned that a few minutes ago. Here at the bottom, there's a bonus link for more information about that program. To participate, you must have had an honorable discharge. Be sure to include a copy of your military DD-214 paperwork showing your honorable discharge with your application. The next couple of items are basic but important. Proofread for any missing information. Make sure you have provided an answer to all necessary fields. Second, don't forget to sign and date your application. Finally, determine if you need a special accommodation to take your exam. If so, complete a request form and submit it with your application. We'll talk about the use of a translator a little bit later.
Next is a closer look at our fingerprint requirements, which are used for a criminal background check. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB, depending on the type of business entity. All applicants, each corporate officer, each partner, each owner, the responsible managing employee, all home improvement salespersons. If you are in California, you must submit fingerprints electronically with what's called live scan. You can get an updated list of live scan locations around California, broken down by county, on the Attorney General's website. We have got a link here, or you can simply go to the Attorney General website and search for live scan. You'll also see we have a bonus link at the bottom of the screen to the fingerprint information page on our CSLB website. If you're out of a state, it's going to be tough for you to get us your fingerprints. That's because you must submit hard copies of them, old-fashioned way. Those take anywhere between 3 to 6 months for the FBI and Department of Justice to process. When things settle down with COVID-19, you might want to consider traveling to California to get your electronic live scan done here.
So what happens if you have any criminal convictions? CSLB may deny your license for the following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of contract. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB also considers. They are the nature and the severity of the crimes, the amount of time that has passed since a conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates felony criminal convictions within 7 years of the application date. So for applications filed this year, we would look back to 2014. For misdemeanor criminal convictions, we would look back 3 years of the application date, back to 2018. That's unless the convictions are for a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications we get based on the criminal convictions. You'll also note the bonus link on our fingerprint information page.
Okay, along with the education credits we talked about earlier, this next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop and the part of the application that causes the most headaches for applicants. It is how you demonstrate your work experience on your application. Remember, the license qualifier needs 4 years or 48 months of experience within the past 10 years in the classification for which you're applying. That means at least 4 years of experience since 2011. The experience must be at no less than a journeyman level or as a foreman, supervising employee, contractor, or owner builder. A journeyman is defined as an experienced worker who is fully qualified as opposed to a trainee and can perform trade without supervision, or one who has completed an apprenticeship program.
There's a limited amount of space on the application to show your certified work experience, so feel free to use additional pages if needed and simply attach them at the end of the work experience form. Use as many certifications of work experience forms as you need in order to provide the required 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. You're going to want to use a different form for each certifier. Be as accurate as possible. Make sure that the person who is certifying your work describes the actual work that you performed and the dates in which you performed them. We will now be providing some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate work experience. Remember, we don't want you to copy and paste these, they're just samples. So do not copy and paste the information we're about to provide directly into your application. Just use them as a guide.
At the top of this chart is the classification and type of experience you are trying to demonstrate. This first example is journey person experience. The overall theme we will keep repeating is the more specific the description, the better. Note, the work experience form should be completed by your certifier, someone who has knowledge and observed your work experience for the classification you are applying for. That person does not have to be a licensed contractor.
Okay, so our first example here is for the Class B General Building Contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for journey person experience is to be specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work like this. Bob performed rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior and exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. An unacceptable description would be something generic, something like this: residential general building trades. For four-person experience, the description must include some hands-on work and/or your supervisory work. Here's an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job site performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, an unacceptable description would be something generic like this: residential general building trades. For supervising employee experience, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at the supervisor level. For example, as a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Something unacceptable would be something like this: residential general building trades. For out-of-state contractor experience, the description must include examples of work done that were either out-of-state, military, federal land, or for a government entity. Applicants can qualify as a journey person, foreperson, or a supervising employee. But we want to give you a tip. Be specific about the duties and your employment circumstances. Our next example is for our C27 landscaping contractor. First, for experience at the journeyman level. So the best type of description would be something like this. Jane performed landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mill strips, and pathways and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be something like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C27 landscaping contractor, the best work experience description for a foreperson would be something like this. Jane oversaw other staff at job site performing landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mill strips, and pathways and tree pruning. Something unacceptable would be something like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, and planting. For a C27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at the supervisor level. The best description would be something like this. As a construction lead on multiple projects, Jane supervised landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mill strips and pathways, and tree pruning. Something unacceptable for the supervising employee would be something like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, and planting. Finally, for our out-of-state contractors, the same guidance that we showed you for general building contractors would apply. Be sure to include examples of your out-of-state work, as well as for the military, federal lands, or for government entity. Be sure to be specific when you describe your duties and employment circumstances. By law, the CSLB must randomly review and verify all the information provided on at least 3% of our applications. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation that you can use to support your work experience in the event that your application was selected and you were asked to provide additional documentation. Now remember, you're only going to want to submit this supplemental documentation if it's requested by CSLB. And it should not be mailed in with your application. So only when the CSLB staff requests it, then you can go ahead and mail it in. On the lower right of the screen, you'll see a link to this publication on our website, along with additional information on experience documentation, in case you'd like to print it out. If you look at the chart, you can see that the first column is for documents that you can use to prove experience if you were employed by a contractor. The second column is for documenting your experience if you were self-employed. The third column is for documenting your experience if you were applying for a Class B general contractor and you need to use your owner-builder experience to meet the minimum requirements. So there's different items that you can use to prove that experience. Here's the next page of acceptable documentation. You can click on that link that's there so that you can view and print this publication. Here's the final page of the acceptable documentation. If you do not have this information readily available, you may want to begin to gather it now, just in case that you are asked to provide it in the future. Remember, what you're trying to do is demonstrate that you have at least 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. CSLB staff may contact the certifier of the experience or other parties to verify the information provided.
One other note, CSLB gets more than 1,000 applications a month. So our application processing staff has seen it all. They have got 2 pieces of advice for you. First, don't cut and paste from this presentation, please. Also, don't try to get around having to take a trade test by applying for multiple subcategories under the 60 limited specialty classification. Okay, that is the content you will need to fill out your application. Before getting it to CSLB, Double check to make sure you did not miss anything. Be sure to sign and date it as well. And don't forget to include the all-important $330 application fee. You will pay additional $200 initial licensing fee after you pass your exam or exams. Then put your application packet in the mail to CSLB. Hand deliver to one of our public counters. We have got a bonus link at the bottom of the screen with our office locations.
Okay, so now that we've gone through the information that you'll need to include, here's a closer look at the application itself so that you can see where this information goes. This is section 1 here of our application, the business name and address. So here in section 1 is where you're going to list the business name. Remember, when selecting a business name, make sure that the name that you have selected is compatible, one, with the classification of your license, and also, secondly, with the entity that you are applying for, and that it's not going to be misleading. If your business is a corporation or an LLC, you're going to need to first make sure that your name that you provide here in this section matches exactly the business name that you have registered with the Secretary of State. In line 2 is where you will indicate what classification you are applying for. The mailing address and phone number that you list here on line 3A and 3C will be made public on CSLB's website once you are licensed. Section 2, can we look at section 2 of the application? If you could go back one slide, please. Thank you. Business entity. So in section 2, you're going to select your business entity. If you're applying for a corporation or an LLC, you will need to provide your registration number that's going to be provided to you by the Secretary of State. Make sure that you pay extra attention to the instructions in this section pertaining to the entity for which you are applying. Next is section 3, the qualifying individual full legal name and address. In section 3 is where you're going to list the qualifiers information. Remember that the qualifier is a person that meets the experience requirements and also is responsible for the direct supervision and control of the construction operations. The qualifier is also the person who takes the examinations. On line number 6, you will list any previous or current license numbers you've held. You will also need to list the percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. For example, if you're the only person that will be listed on the license, in this section here, you put 100%. On line number 7, you will need to indicate what position will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements. You'll need to make sure that you have listed all positions depending on the entity that you have selected. You can find more information about this on pages 2 through 4 of our application instructions. Line number 8 is where you will sign and date your application. Here in section 4 is the personal full legal names and addresses. So here's where you're going to list the personnel information for all of the remaining personnel that will be listed on your license. For example, if you're applying for a corporation, you're going to need to indicate who will be the responsible managing officer or employee, the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. Again, more information can be found on page 4 of our application instructions. If you will have more than 4 people on your license, you can make additional copies of this page here and include it with your application. Remember that if you're going to have a corporation or an LLC, you're going to want to make sure that everybody who is listed with the Secretary of State is listed here in the section 4. And like we mentioned, if you have more than 4, go ahead and make copies of this form and submit it with your application. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application here in section 4. Now, section 5 is just a series of yes or no questions, so we're not going to cover those. They're pretty self-explanatory. Here, section 6 is the qualifier education, apprenticeship, and licensure and military section. So you may be granted credit towards the 4 years experience requirement based on your education. Question number 17 asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit your official sealed transcripts if you would like to be considered for this credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you will need to provide a certificate of completion. Get those sealed transcripts sent to you, and then you want to include them with your application packet. Do not have them sent directly to CSLB, just because we don't want to take a chance that they aren't matched up with the correct application. So make sure that you have them sealed, sent to you, and then you send them in with your application. CSLB may grant you up to 3 years of credit based on your education. That's a may. This credit is not given on a year-to-year basis, meaning if you have a 2-year college degree, you won't necessarily be granted the full 2 years of credit towards the experience requirement. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed your education. The 10-year time frame does not apply to education. That's just for actual work experience. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received out of the country. But if your degree is in any other language other than English, it's going to have to be translated. Next is the actual certification of work experience. Here, part 1 will be filled out by you, the applicant. Here's where you're going to list the information for your employer where you gained your experience. If you were self-employed when you gained the experience, please make sure to check the box here in line number 2. If you're applying for a B, general construction license, and need to use experience obtained while you were working on your own property, make sure to mark this box here in line number 4. Next is part 2. Part 2 will be filled out by the certifier, a person that you choose. Anybody can certify your experience. So in this section, the certifier must include the dates in which you obtained the experience. They must also select if you were working on a part-time or a full-time basis. Keep in mind that if you were working part-time, you're only going to receive 50% worth of credit for that time, which means you will need to provide 8 years of experience within the last 10 years. The 4-year requirement. On line number 6, your certifier will need to list the duties that you performed or supervised that are considered critical for the classification that you are applying for. You can read a description of the critical duties in CSLB's description of classification booklet available on our website. Now remember, we had mentioned before, do not copy and paste the description from the booklet. This is only to give you an idea of what CSLB considers to be critical duties related to your license. Your certifier should complete this section in their own words, and you want to make sure that they are as complete and accurate as possible. Finally, the third part of the work experience certificate is also to be completed by your certifier. They will need to list their relationship to you. There's different boxes there, as you can see, and they will provide their contact information. Lastly, they will need to sign and date the certification. Next, we're going to talk about the owner-builder information. This is the owner-builder B, General Building Construction Project Experience Form. This form only needs to be completed if you're applying for a B, General Construction License, and you want to receive experience credit for working on projects that were on your own property. A separate form is required for each project on the property. The experience must be verifiable through building permits, final inspections, and other documentation. You will need to list the building permit number here on line number 6. On line number 7, you will need to provide the scope of the project. In boxes 8 through 10, you're going to need to provide more detailed information about the project. Question number 11 asks if other general construction contractors worked on the project and what trades they performed. Remember, this information should be as complete and accurate as possible.
With all the information Anna just covered, this is a good time to remind you that we are recording this workshop. We'll post a video on our YouTube channel so you can go back and rewatch in case there is anything you have missed. Okay, so you got your application submitted. How do you check the status of that application? Here are 2 resources. First is the secure check. You will need your application fee number and contractor PIN number to get an update. We will send you that information after we receive, accept, and post your completed application. The second way to check is to look online at our processing times. Each week we update our website with the date we receive the paperwork for a specific process. So look for date being worked on and know that date shown in after the date we likely receive your paperwork. It's likely we are busy working on your application.